Miss Kristi here, and I am so excited to be together again cooking in the kitchen. Today we are learning how to make popcorn chicken poppers. This small meal uses just 3 ingredients. We cook it in our oven for just 12 minutes and we will make 6 popcorn chicken poppers. We're gonna have fun making this together today, and I'm so glad you're here.
All is calm and all is bright.
The first step to cooking and working in the kitchen is to wash our hands. While I wash my hands with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds, let's go over the ingredients and supplies that you'll need to gather to cook along today. The ingredients you'll need are 1 8-ounce can of refrigerated dough, 6 pieces of frozen popcorn chicken, and ½ tablespoon of butter. The supplies you'll need are a cutting board, baking sheet, liquid measuring cup, ½ tablespoon, a pizza cutter, pastry brush, butter knife, a fork, and oven mitts for safety. Okay, great. Your hands are clean and my hands are clean. We've gathered our ingredients and supplies, so let's get started making our popcorn chicken poppers. This is just a fun, quick meal that we can learn to make for ourselves, and it tastes really good. The very first thing we want to do is preheat our oven to 375 degrees. That's what our popcorn chicken poppers will cook on. So we want that to be preheating while we put together the poppers. So I'm going to preheat my oven to 375 degrees. Okay, great. Let's get started putting them together. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is grab your can of refrigerated dough. So this is just an 8-ounce can of dough, and we need to open it up. And how I usually get these open is I just bang it on the counter until it pops open. You can also use a spoon. You can press a spoon along that line. I think that's what it actually tells you to do, but I think it's easier to just give it a whack on the counter to open it up. So all we need to do is take out our dough, and there'll be a seam that you can find to unroll it. And we want to keep it in a rectangle. And I'm just going to place it on my cutting board in front of me. And I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit because it's pretty small. And I just want it to be a little bit bigger. You don't want to pull too hard or else you'll end up tearing the dough. And if you do, not a big deal, you can just push it back together, kind of like this here. Came apart a little bit. But all I want to do is stretch it out a little bit because we're going to cut this into 3 strips. And I want them to be somewhat the same size, or as much as they can be the same size. So now you're going to want to grab your pizza cutter. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this rectangle into 3 strips. So you can see that I have the long side facing away from me. So I'm going to take my pizza cutter and I'm just going to find what is about 1/3 of the dough. So I'm just making a little mark, 2 little marks, because I want to make sure, like, does that look even? It doesn't have to be perfect, but we want enough to have 3 strips. So all I'm doing is going straight down. And a pizza cutter makes this really easy. I think it's easier than using a knife, so that's why we're using a pizza cutter on a cutting board. All right, so I have 3 strips. I can see this one's a little bit thin, so I'm gonna stretch it out just a little bit, if I can. And if not, I'll just find my smallest piece of popcorn chicken to put in that side. All right, I have my 3 pieces of dough, and now I'm just gonna cut this right in half. So I'm going to find the middle of this rectangle and just cut this right in half. So now from our 1 sheet of dough, I've made 6 little rectangles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we are going to make 6 popcorn chicken poppers. You can put your pizza cutter this side. We are done with that now. The next thing you want to do is just grab your 6 pieces of frozen popcorn chicken. So that's what I have here. And all I'm going to do is take 1 piece of popcorn chicken and put it close to the middle of my sheet of dough. So I've got 6 sheets of dough, 6 pieces of popcorn chicken. This is frozen. And if you have smaller pieces of popcorn chicken, you could put a couple pieces in each. Whatever you decide fits in there. These ones are big enough where I can just use 1 piece. And from here too, once we make this initial recipe, you could always add a little bit more inside before we seal it closed here in a second. So if you want to put some cheese in there, if you wanted to put maybe like a little bit of a sauce, once you get the basic recipe, then you can go ahead and make it your own and try different things. That's the joy of cooking for yourself in the kitchen, is you get to test out new things and see what you like and see what you don't. So this is just basically bread and chicken, but if you wanted to make it again and put something else in the middle before we seal it, go for it and let me know how it turns out. So once you have your chicken in the middle of each of our little sheets of dough, all I'm going to do is take one end and fold it over to the other side. We're making like a little pocket for our popcorn chicken poppers. And you might need to move your chicken around a little bit if it's not letting you close it. Trial and error. Just need to get one side to the other. All right, next thing we want to do is I just want to seal these closed so that it gets up to, when we cook it in the oven, it puffs up into this nice little pocket. So the next thing you're going to do is grab your fork, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to move this over to the side a little bit, is take the back of my fork and I'm just pressing down the dough. I'm sealing the top piece of the dough to the bottom piece. Just like that, and it makes this little pocket. And I'm gonna do that on all 6 pieces, all 6 of my poppers. Basically just sealing the dough together. You could use your fingers too, but the little tiny tongs on the fork helps seal it really well. So if you wanna save some time, just use your fingers, you could, but I think a fork is a little bit easier. And like I said, if you did decide to put cheese in there or sauce, sealing it like we're doing right now just helps to keep everything on the inside. So I'm doing that for all 6 of them, and we are almost done. We have one more step before we pop them in the oven. This is just a super simple recipe that you can definitely learn to customize and make your own. All right, now that I have them sealed, what I'm gonna do is just put them on my baking sheet. So I've got my baking sheet next to me. So go ahead and grab your baking sheet. And I'm just going to place them on, spread them out a little bit. So I'll probably do 3 rows of 2. So I've got 2 lined up, just so they have enough room to cook and puff up in the oven. But before we pop them in, like I mentioned, we've got one more step, and that's just to brush them with melted butter. It's gonna make the top a little bit golden, it's gonna give it a bit more rich flavor. So what I want you to do now is grab your liquid measuring cup. We're not actually gonna measure anything in here, we're just using it to melt our butter. So place your liquid measuring cup in front of you, and then you need your 1/2 tablespoon. It's the one that says 1/2 TBSP. And then I'm also gonna grab my butter knife and my butter, because we're basically just now going to measure out 1/2 tablespoon of butter and put it into our liquid measuring cup so we can melt it in the microwave. I'm using my tablespoon to measure, my 1/2 tablespoon to measure. If you have lines on your butter, like I usually say, you could always do 1 tablespoon and just cut that in half. I like to measure things to know exactly how much I need. So basically all I'm going to do is take my butter and measure it right into my 1/2 tablespoon. It doesn't have to be exact because we're just gonna end up using a little bit to brush it on top of our poppers. So if you get a little bit more, you get a little bit less, not a huge deal. So this is about 1/2 tablespoon, and I'm just going to pop it into my liquid measuring cup. And then you can put your butter knife aside, you can put your 1/2 tablespoon aside, that's all we needed those for. And now I'm just going to put this in the microwave for 30 seconds. That's all it needs. It's not a lot of butter, but I do want it melted so we can brush it on. So I'm gonna pop this in for 30 seconds and then we'll do the next step. All right, right, friends, so this just melted for 30 seconds. I grabbed the handle, which I like to melt things in this liquid measuring cup because I can grab a handle then. I'm not having to touch the hot container, so that's why I like using the liquid measuring cup. But from here, you're just gonna wanna grab your pastry brush. Now, if you don't have a pastry brush, you could always just pour this over, maybe use the back of a spoon to spread it out. If you have a pastry brush, it makes it a little bit easier. So all I'm doing, I'm gonna give this a quick stir, dunk my pastry brush in. I think this is the fun part, and I'm just going to brush them with butter. You don't have to do this step. Say that you made these and you decided you didn't want to take the extra time to put the butter on. Maybe you don't have butter today. This is just a little bit where it gives it a little bit more flavor, helps that top to get a little more golden and crispy, but you definitely don't have to do this part. And you can see we used a half a tablespoon of butter and there's a little bit left, so you don't need a lot, but I'm just gonna quick brush over each one to make them nice and buttery. And then you can put your liquid measuring cup to the side and you can put your pastry brush to the side. We are done with all of those. I do have my fork next to me. I'm just gonna use that to scoop them off once it's cooled down, so you can keep that out as well. But now we just need to put these in the oven, and they only cook for 12 minutes. So I have my timer here set to 12 minutes. I'm going to pop these in the oven, and as soon as our timer goes off, we'll talk about getting them out safely and letting them cool. Okay friends, this is exciting. Our 12-minute timer just went off, so now we need to get our popcorn chicken poppers out of the oven to cool down. So I'm gonna have you put your oven mitts on for safety. That pan is going to be very hot. So we need to turn off our oven, put our oven mitts on for safety, and then you're going to take them out and let them cool for 5 minutes on a protected surface. So I can put it on my cutting board. If you have a pot holder, you wanna put it on something that's not gonna burn your counter. So take them out and we're gonna let them cool for 5 minutes and then we'll talk about tasting them. All right, let's let them cool. Okay friends, so we have let this cool for 5 minutes. I wanted to make sure that the pan was cool to touch, that when we take these off, you're not gonna burn your fingers from touching the food. So 5 minutes is a good amount of time to let them cool. But now they're done, so all I'm gonna do is take my plate here next to me, and the same fork that we used earlier, you can use to lift off. You could always use a spatula if you wanted. I just wanted one less supply, so if you wanna grab a spatula, they lift off pretty easily because that dough doesn't stick very much to our baking sheet. So you can just take your fork and scoop them off. Sometimes you can even lift some of them off, which is why I just have a fork and not a spatula, because they lift off pretty quickly. But here we go, let's move this out of the way. You're done with your fork. But now we have our 6 popcorn chicken poppers. I wanted to show you a couple things here. So like I talked about earlier, if you don't seal the dough when we're laying it out into our rectangle, it kind of separates, you'll see a little pockets. If you don't completely seal it with your fork, you'll have a little bit of an opening here, especially if you decide to put a cheese or a sauce in there. This would be an area that it could come out, but if you're just doing the dough and the popcorn chicken and you don't completely seal it, you can see it's not coming out. But I mean, it smells good, it tastes really good, it's buttery, it's flaky, it's gonna fill you up from that protein from the chicken, and it was just a really quick meal that we've now learned to make for ourselves, and it only took 12 minutes in the oven. So I do hope you try and make it, or you try and make it again, and when you do, let me know how it goes. Leave me a comment, let me know if you have any questions. You can even send me a picture of how your popcorn chicken poppers turned out. I'd love to get to see your creation, and then maybe we can share it next week. Speaking of next week, on next week's episode, which is episode 66, we are learning how to make chocolate peanut butter banana bites. This fun snack uses just 3 ingredients, and it's no bake and gluten-free. All we do is pop it in our freezer for an hour. In order to cook along and make our chocolate peanut butter banana bites, these are the ingredients that you'll need to have in your kitchen for next week. 1 banana, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, and 2 tablespoons of chocolate chips. Well, friends, our time together today is almost over. I do hope you've enjoyed learning how to make our popcorn chicken poppers. I know I had fun, and I already can't wait to cook together again next time. But before you say goodbye to this episode, make sure to click subscribe if you haven't already. You just have to click the little picture of me in the corner. That way you don't miss next week's episode. It'll be out on Friday. And I'll see you then. Bye, friends. It's time to eat. Which one do I want?